There are 4 teams that we have agreed on the board that should be discussed. I would like to add a 5th issue where we should focus, and that is around the needs of the users and how you, so to say, investigate and know that you as a user can swallow the information. I think this is very important also. So the suggestion by Hans-Georg and myself is that we focus on these 5 issues. The discussion should be organized that it's open for some time. We see what happens within 60 minutes. Then we try to summarize up what has happened so far. And in the end of this 2-hour or 1 hour, 50 minutes discussion, we try to summarize key issues. And that the whole discussion should help to maintain input into how we progress these projects. I think there are a number of vendors that are here. So I think we would like to ask them their comments and suggestions. But from now on, the discussion is open, suggesting that we focus on these 5 teams added. Of course, you can add other things, but we need to concentrate so we can see a road forward. Please. Please, Walter.
I would like to suggest that we focus on SPC as a content and not solving the world and reducing all the errors that are possible. And if I go back to the history of this group, I know that we started with the need of preventing medication errors, and that we wanted to prevent errors that are very common and are very dangerous. And we believe at that time that, for instance, dosing errors would be very relevant for such a task, and therefore one of the bubbles in Lars' picture was that dosing should be covered by such an electronic information. Now, I believe that everybody agrees that the SPC is a very, very crucial basis of the use of a drug these days, and therefore many vendors and also many universities are extracting data from such a piece of paper. And obviously they do it in a different way, and they might interpret the information differently. And therefore, one of the goals of this group at the very beginning was to structure this information in a way that we can maybe ask the agency to get this information from the pharmaceutical industry, because the pharmaceutical industry actually knows the data that we need, and they put it into PROSA, and we then re-extract the PROSA to make it structured. And this is an error source, and obviously it's very laborious, and it's very difficult to keep it up to date. And therefore, the group decided to focus on a few elements of such an electronic SPC. And one of the very first things we did is we defined a model which would help us to dose drugs appropriately, and then to suggest that this information would be added in electronic form from the very beginning, not as an extracted information from a piece of paper, because there is always a loss of information. Now, one of the problems we did not solve is what kind of information do we actually need. I believe we almost solved it for drug administration and drug dosing, but there is many more things that we should consider, like contraindications, like indications, like adverse events, and so on. And my suggestion would just be that we try to remember what the primary goal actually was. The goal was, do not transfer paper into electronic data. Get the data as electronic data from the very beginning, but to get that, we have to define what we need. And obviously, there will be many variables, at least for the pharmacokinetic part. We had more than 400 variables, I believe. And obviously, they will not be available from the very beginning after approval, but they, as time goes by, will be generated. And who, if not the agency and the pharmaceutical industry, we know about that. And therefore, my suggestion would be that we shouldn't forget what the goal was, and that we should start at the very basic definition of what elements we need from the SPC. And if we solve that, I think we have moved quite a lot.
Thank you very much. Birger Wimblad.
I'm not a clinical pharmacologist, and I think my experience through the years has been that clinical pharmacologists generally overestimate the knowledge in clinical pharmacology with the ordinary clinicians. And that means that you when you make such a database, you want to make it perfect. And if you're for example, an orthopedic surgeon, you don't want any complicated data. You want the answer yes or no. So I think if you construct the ideal database should be able to discern between, you should describe yourself as a doctor when going into the database, or of course you have it there, so you have described yourself once for what type of information can you digest when you sit with the patient in front, and what is good for you. You are on certain levels. And they are very different. And the other thing is that I think they should also be patient-related, that you have the age, the weight, and the sex of the patient, because that could concentrate the data, the information that you get to which is actual for this patient. It's an elderly patient, and when you dose this drug, please check. It's easy to overdose it. There are many intoxications described. Please check with the plasma concentrations, or talk to your internist. So, because he has experience of the drugs. And we should remember that in prescription situations, most of them are in outpatient care. That's where the bulk is. And I think few doctors would, in front of the patient, prescribe a new drug. You can't counsel a patient and prescribe a drug that you know nothing about. So you can, in most situations, you are a bit familiar to the drug. So the problem is how to handle it in this special patient situation. And then you come back to that why it should be patient-related when you go into the database.
Walter, please.
If I may, just an answer. I fully agree with you. But the model behind such a suggestion must cover all the relevant aspects of the calculation. And if you have a 5-year-old child in renal failure, then obviously you need different variables than if you have an elderly patient without. And therefore, I believe the task must be to define the variables that we should get from EMA or the pharmaceutical industry or both, to be able to do that, exactly to do that, what you suggest.
I think, thus, I completely agree, of course. If you find that you are in a situation that you have to prescribe this drug, in spite that you are not familiar to it, it should be expandable, the database. So you click for the next step and see whether you can handle it or not. And probably in most cases you can handle it if you get the proper information. But then you're motivated. But the important thing is that when you open it, you shouldn't be confronted to a bulk of knowledge which is just so huge that you can't find the relevant data just for this situation. So it's difficult. It's a difficult task to build this thing, and your searching principle is, of course, very relevant in this situation.
Please, Hans here first.
Just to manage expectations, I can see that you want a model that can capture all intricate patient-related questions, but you will not be able to fill in those data cells because we will not know that. We will not know, to use your example, what is the best dose for a 5-year-old child with renal failure. And I think we should be clear about one thing. I said to manage expectations. We cannot, this will result in many empty fields. And if we do that, we will say, well, we know nothing about this drug at the time of licensing. And this cannot result, in some cases that may be justified, but it should not result that we reinvent the whole drug development paradigm and say we now need all the information for all the subgroups. We're already being blasted in the regulatory community for making drug development almost impossible because we are upping the ante year on year. So please bear that in mind. And my starting point would be, yes, look at a model that theoretically encompasses all these eventualities, but please be aware that we will not have more information than we have today at the time of licensing. Over time, the information will accumulate.
Julian, please.
Okay, I think there are different areas. So the one area is what the model should handle, so what you theoretically can fill in that one. The next one is how you look at the data, which is a completely other view. So that means on the one hand side you have the data, and then you have to have any tool to get the different views on the data. And the third point is you need the pharmaceutical companies that they are able to fill that all in. So, and that's for both sides is technical steps that you have to think about standards and how they can be filled in and how it can be exchanged. So that's the technical area below that. So one is the data input, then the views, and the filling of that one.
Okay, Birgit Egerman, please.
I completely agree with Walter that we need to define what type of data the SPC should contain and how they should be structured. But when we would like to address how we could promptly have access to the ESPC, I think that then we need to have a different way as well, because one thing is that we wish something from the pharmaceutical companies, but it will take some time until the information will be structured. So if we would like to have promptly some access, I think we need some different ways within the project also to use the existing information and try to, maybe through extraction, use at least parts of it. I don't know. But I think otherwise it will take a very long time.
Can I make a comment and suggestion? I think what we are now discussing is different view how we want to process this. I think it's very important to be clear why we have different views. I would then like to see, can our invited guests, the vendors, how do you see how you would progress? If one road is that we to define the model, the needs. The other view is that this is important, but we should use already what we have, because, as Hans-Jörg said, if you put a burden on the drug company, it may not work. So I would like to see if the vendor representatives could give us some hints on the way forward. Yes. Please.
I would like to come back for codes. As far as I know, in the SMPCs there are codes for ATC code. There is a sign for that. There you have some not really coding, but the frequency of the side effects are like coded. It's at least the same terminology should be used in the SPCs for. But there are no ICD codes and no other codes that could be used in the SPCs, which would make our life much easier.
Can I understand correctly? This, of course, is not the obligation of either EMEA or so to say regulatory bodies, but it's an important issue how you make possible to link to these types of code system. Do you have a comment?
Yeah. Yes, just to confirm that indeed there is two types of terminology which are used in a standardized way in the SMPC. One is indeed the ATC code. The other one relates indeed to undesirable effect because they are collected using the MEDRA terminology, and they should be reproduced using this same terminology in the SMPC.
I think we're trying to find out each other's needs. That's the purpose of this workshop. I'm hearing from one stakeholder that you would like to have the ICD codes in the SPC. Now, my first question is to the others in the room. Would you see value in that as well, or is that an isolated view? And if you see value, can I play back to my colleagues? Why are we not doing it? Could we do it? Is there a reason why we're not doing it? ICD, not ATC.
Oh. Okay, please.
Neil Jones from First Data Bank. I can see a definite use case for controlled terminologies. Currently, SPCs have content, and I'll give you an example. One drug has an indication of acute and chronic schizophrenia on the same line. Now, you can't have acute and chronic schizophrenia. So what they mean is acute schizophrenia and a separate indication of chronic schizophrenia. Now, I wouldn't particularly like ICD because ICD is a classification and isn't necessarily covering all of the terms that we need in medical care, but a controlled terminology that describes indications, contraindications, precautions, and side effects that we could commonly share would be incredibly valuable. But that mustn't be a proprietary or a paid-for terminology. It needs to be a free but controlled terminology in a way that stops the industry using general terms for indications and very specific terms for contraindications, which is what we tend to get these days. And different drugs will use different terms for exactly the same thing. And that makes it very, very difficult to process as a vendor.
Oh, thank you for this very good comment. Who is next?
Just a small reflection. ICD-10 exists. For make a coding system which is free to use, it takes time. By that time, ICD-10 is the best we have.
Okay, I think it's Steinar Madsen and then Birger Wimblad. And I would like a representative from the vendor side to give more comments on the question raised by Hans-Georg.
In Norway, we have some experience with coding, and presently all diagnoses that are reimbursed in Norway is now coded by ICPC for general practice and ICD for hospital practice. So we have quite an extensive experience. And the next step in Norway will be to couple these codes with the drugs. So we have started.
Birger Wimblad.
I had exactly the same comment. It's that you did. It's the best that we have, and it's good enough for this purpose, in my opinion at least. The ICD diagnosis for neonatology are very imperfect. The 10 version is better than the one before, but it doesn't cover. But it's good enough, so we can use it. So I also have a question that can come back later, maybe. That should these databases be open to the public? I mean, that's if you have a commercial interest, it makes things a bit difficult. I don't know how to solve that problem. The database I'm working with, drugs and malformations, is open to the public, and we find that very useful, because under treatment during pregnancy is much bigger risk than over treatment. And if I was working with a database that was secret to the patient, I think non-compliance would be much more prevalent.
You have a comment, please?
Yeah, just some comments from a vendor perspective. I think one relates to the core of the business of being a vendor is that in order to engage in creating XML, creating SPC, and contributing in this space, we need a business case for us as well to go to our boards and make a compelling case why we should engage in this. And so that comes back to the driving forces, incentives that you have here on the table. I think, I guess I speak for some of the vendors here, we're here as well to understand, is there a business case for us to make that case, actually to engage? And the task at hand, if I look at it, And it was expressed very clearly, we want that in XML, we want it processable, we want to actually interlink it with other systems. That means we have to convert that somehow into XML. We recently just took the SPCs and trained in statistic-based machine translation. It's 12.8 million words just for German, times 23. We have a large set of text that we would need in XML in whatever shape in order to fulfill the possible business cases that have been addressed here. So our recommendation from a vendor, don't over-engineer it again, make it simple. Take a standard. As I said, take DITA or something like this that has been implemented in other industries which have similar complex product information things to do, where there is a vendor base, where there is experiences. And again, as a vendor, our capability is building software. An agency is approving medicines and gives us policies. That's not our competence. Our competence is doing software, and therefore, if there are clear guidelines, if you could define a data model that hasn't to be perfect in the beginning, but something that is convincingly a good match that is realistic and reasonable, and you have the right kind of policies in place that all the different stakeholders do have to move, I think we can go back to our CEOs as a vendor and say, yes, it's worthwhile to invest. Yes, it's worthwhile to go into this direction. And that's a bit the hope being here in this context. I hope that is useful for
Thank
for
you.
as a
First, Hans-Georg, then Daniel Rodriguez.
I'm not sure whether we're talking about the same thing here. You say business case for what? Let me reiterate, and I haven't done it this time, the agency's vision when we embarked on this. Today, on our website, you find SPCs. This is authorized drug information. We don't make any money on that. And on the information per se, nobody makes money. The industry makes money on if they sell a drug called Herceptin. But if you want to know what the contraindications for Herceptin are, you get it for free. Now, we understand the world is moving on. There is electronic healthcare. And all we said is we would like to see on our website, or by whatever technical means, we would like side by side that human readable information next to machine readable information. Mm-hmm. It should be, and that is our view, and others may differ, that should be freely available to everybody. So if you're a software vendor, can you make money out of that? No. But what you sell to your clients is software somewhere else in the e-healthcare environment, and you would tack on the information that is freely available from us or even the industry or wherever and make use of it. That was our original vision. If you say that is no use for us, we can debate. But just to clarify.
Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I think it's indeed two different things we're talking about. One is the data that is public and should be public, and especially if we talk about terminology, that has to be available, because take SPCs, they are generated in 23 languages through a translation process. People have to access this terminology in order to create from the outset consistent, accessible data. But in order to maintain this, there is software necessary. In order to deal with structured content, there is software necessary. In order to write structured content, there is software necessary. In order to translate structured content, there is software needed. In order to search this content, there is software needed. There is a business model for companies building software, and we are representing one of those vendors. So it's not the data in terms to make money out of data. It is about enabling the use cases that come with this data. And that is
and what you are saying, if you have a standard like SML, information through SML, it will simplify this standardization across languages.
You need a standard, you need a data model, and this should be based on something that an IT community can handle and support. And I'm very sure there could be business cases for software vendors that all in all will bring goodness to this exercise.
But
That's all I wanted to
for
say.
me, it's quite clear that, and I completely agree with my colleague Walter Haffeli, that this type of information is really needed in healthcare and will be even so more in future. So if we don't embark on it, we go into problems generally. Daniel Rodriguez, please.
I would say the same as Hans-Georg about how kind of, I don't understand the problem here, because there are a lot of information here that are produced by EMA and other regulatory organizations, and this is a very difficult problem to get structured information from this. In XML, I don't know, this is XML, people is putting XML in front of the problem, I don't know why. The thing is to get structured information in whatever format you want. This is a difficult task. Very 23 languages, a lot of inconsistencies, text information, technical problems. This is a difficult problem. But if you solve that difficult problem, you have a business case. This is the thing. This is we have to have a solution, technical solution, and you have a business case on that, to putting this on the hands of the healthcare.
Okay, please.
Maybe as another comment to Matthias, as a business case, we are making money, or we have to live making money by selling our services to our customers. And these are the industry. And so you have to be able to attract the pharmaceutical companies to invest into certain systems, in certain processes, right? And so I believe if you're talking about the business model, it's not about how vendors can make business, it's more what's the benefit for the delivery organizations. These are the pharmaceutical companies. And we have to be aware it is useful information, but it is a huge investment for the organizations. They have to change the internal process. And, I know there have been certain bad experience with PIM. Companies have invested a lot of money, and suddenly it has no value. So it is something where you need to be able to convince the industry to invest it. So that's where I think we should consider the business model.
Okay. Can I try to understand a question? And I link to what Hans-Georg said just previously. If you have a model of a type of information that we define as needed in an electronic format, are you saying that then it means an investment for drug companies to provide this data in a structured way? Is that the challenge you see for pharmaceutical companies? Have I understood you correctly? Yes. Okay, thank you. Robert van der Sichele, please.
Well, we have this curious situation that inside the companies, there are extremely sophisticated document management systems working all that information from all the trials. And then they export to the regulatory affair a PDF. That's the situation. And the users, the doctors, don't see the structure, cannot see the structured information. I think what we're talking about, and I come back to Walter, is how can companies who have inside their own systems all the information in an extremely sophisticated, structured way, how can they export in a common format to the regulatory affairs so that we can use it, that information? The question on the board was, why is the SPC useful at the point of care? To me, it's useful as a PDF for legal reasons. the physicians make, the drug information centers make courageous choices saying these are the important side effects, these are the important interactions, and don't talk about other things. But it's always nice to have a referral to be at a PDF so that you can say, if you want to see it all, read the ESPC. So that's at the point of care, that's the one important function. I will not say the only one, but it's a very important function of the SPC for legal protection. I don't think that the SPC, even if it's structured, will have a direct influence at the point of care. It will only be indirect through those who make the knowledge databases for decision support and make life easier for them. So the question is, how can we export the structured information inside the companies to a common export format so that the knowledge database makers have an easier life?
I think you have put forward that the end user is in some way those providing needed information at point of care. I think it's a good point. Please, you had some comment to what was previous said. And think the time we are going that we need to address the issues, where do we have the priorities for the future? I think we have divergent type of ideas, but that will drive us to see how the next step should be.
So just to comment on the converting to PDF, I mean, this is what national agency requests from pharmaceutical industry, because it's the way how they want to have the information. But coming back to the standardization, so there are quite some processes ongoing. I just tried to find information on these ISO processes. So there is a process on identification of medicinal products, and this is something where EMA is highly involved in. So there are already freely available processes. So ISO standards are, at the end of the day, freely available. So there are already discussions on an international level to exchange all this requested information. But so I think I'm not sure where. I think they're nearly at the point where the final draft should be released for comments.
Could I, for clarification, if I ask, what do you think, as a representative for different drug industries, what are the views about providing information in future around SPC? Can you give any, not only saying that what is requested by EMA, EA, and other regulatory bodies? What do you think yourself?
I'm at this point. If you ask me officially, then it's very difficult because
you could give some inclination because we need to understand what could be done.
Yes, I will give you some ideas that we shared within industry, and the idea is to move away from in paper-based information and moving towards one resource of information for medicinal products. And so there is a model already in Europe, which is FASS, the Swedish database, where you have already information for prescribers and for patients. And I mean, it's not exactly what might come out of it, but it's at least a role model that we could use, where you have information that is available also not only for prescribers but also for patients, and there you have then at the end of the day really an informed decision by healthcare professionals and by patients. So these are ideas which we have. So
what you're saying, you want to expand the information to the public. That's the main message, or?
Yeah, because I mean, what we have already is, I mean, if you have interested patients, then they go to Google
And what they have then is lots of information which is not assessed and which you can trust or cannot be trusted. And I think personally what we need, and this is really my personal opinion here, we need one source of information on medicinal products that each and everyone can trust.
Okay. Please.
I think it's also an economic question about that, because I think at the moment a lot of different parties tries to extract the information of the SPC and invest a lot of time. If you look for clinics, if you look for vendors, and even if that's not a business case to construct a data model, it would help a lot of different parties if that eSPC would be available. And that's something I think that it should be some public funding to generate that.
Please.
One observation I'd like to make is that there's two real uses. One is a brand new product, you need to be able to find the information about that product. But actually more importantly is the new side effect or the new dose or the new indication. And it will be easier to extract that information from structured content, but making the change much more explicit would be particularly helpful, so that when a drug starts to cause problems in a patient subgroup, we can draw attention to the end users quickly and easily for that. So firstly, I would make a plea that it needs to be structured, but we do need to indicate when the SPC is changing, why it's changing, because if it's just buried in the middle, it's very hard to find, as we've seen from the semantic talks earlier, to find that information and process it.
And some additional information, please.
I would like to say something. Coming back to the comment of the lady there, I don't remember your name, sorry. The EMEA vision at the moment is to have one single dictionary for all Europe and possibly beyond, the Article 57 dictionary, and possibly in some years from now to implement the ISO standard. So we will have a fully complete dictionary of medicines. Now, if we needed to, this is my personal view, if we need to implement an eSPC, we need to connect to this dictionary and not to something else, because otherwise we duplicate effort. And also because if the eSPC will be made within the telematic set of program that we have at the EMEA, this will make all sense. For the publication of the SPC data, that one I will need is something that is still open, and we needed to have discussion also with NCA for that. Another discussion. In order to implement the eSPC, we have two steps basically. One is for the SPC that have not written, so for the SPCs that have not been written yet, so for the newly authorized product. So those ones should be written directly in a structured format. The complication there is to move, to translate the legacy data from, that to say, the one that have been already circulated and produced in PDF to be moved in a structured format. Now, the point is, and this again is my personal view, if we have to use some text mining tools in order to migrate this information, I think that is, with the figures that I saw there, I don't think that is a good process, because if the precision is 60–70%, I will need someone after to review all this. And therefore, I will need probably 10 full-time equivalent for doing this job. At that point of view, it's not better to take 10 full-time equivalent to make the migration from the PDF to the structured version? Final remark. When we have the, if we want to move to a structured version of the SPC, we need to have a standard. We have, because if not, every vendor can probably define their tool for creating the SPC that will after probably, I guess, sell to the market authorization holder to fill this information, this SPC, will provide the tools that are completely different. So we need to define a standard. We need to go through HL7, through ISO, and we need to define that process. So these are the main aspects that, in my view, we needed to focus on and we need to be aware of. Because if not, we risk to develop the ESPC project in a silos, and we risk to duplicate effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this important contribution.
I would like to make one comment to the text mining. I agree with you to get a fully automatic text mining system to transfer the SPCs and eSPCs is not possible. But I think if you want to do that, to transfer this information all in an electronic format, that text mining can support it to really reduce dramatically the time you need to transform the SPC to eSPC. That's what's my vision of text mining, of the support of text mining.
In principle, I'm a fan of text mining, so and I try to use it very much. For instance, a field where that we had also a project at the EMEA to start to extract the information. We have a pilot on that using text mining techniques to extract information from the narrative of the adverse drug reaction event that we have in EudraVigilance in order to have some additional information to support signal detection. Now, we have this pilot, and the result of this pilot was that in the end, we needed to manually screen this information before publishing. Because if we are using text mining in order to have an initial screening, and after this information is just used internally, fine, I think that we can take the risk. But if I need to use text mining algorithms that are not 100% precise to put after the information found on the public without control, I don't think that anyone will take this risk. So we need to have additional people. Now, if the text mining on a particular SPC and a text is producing 70% right, we need a person doing the rest of the job. And you have there is no precise pattern, I think, but you have more experience on that, on this to me, respect me. There is not a precise pattern for the errors that they are going to produce. So you cannot say, okay, this section, you text mining, you are 100% correct. This section, you need to review. You need to review everything. So I don't know if this can help. So I have some doubts, but we can further discuss that.
Okay, I think how many hands do we have up? 1, 2, and then I have a comment question. So I think it's Birger and...
I would like to come back to the end user. Are there any good scientific studies how doctors in general are using this kind of support? That means, do we know what people in average are the ideas of what they should look very, very divergent? It's difficult to do this. Or is there some kind of common things that we should know of? I was looking for such studies when we were going to do such a study on our little database, but I couldn't find them, probably because I was searching the wrong way. But is there a knowledge about this? Or if it isn't, shouldn't we try to study that a little bit?
Thank you.
I want to have 2 points. One is that if you set codes and ways to submit information to the drug companies, I think most of the work could be done by the drug companies, like writing ICD-10 codes till you have better codes. It would be nice to have better codes than that. Or this is the starting dose, this is the end dose, this is the way that renal failure should be marked in a standard way, and you should fill in the data to your products. They will do it. The second is also when to display the information, if you could have standards for vendors like us, that, okay, this information should be included, we give it. But you should represent it, whoever you give. For the public, in an advertisement in any way, this information for contraindication, pregnancy, and lots of things, basics, we provide it, but you should present
it. Bob?
I don't think there are business texts beside the pharmaceuticals company or industry where the structure of the text is really hard-coded in the law. What must be in the SPC is in the legal documents. It's to already a very fine state of granularity. And it's very explicit. It's even with numbered. The structure is even numbered, and it's this numbering that needs to be used. So it is already in the law. I heard this morning that the PIM project has failed. It was an attempt to make an XML schema or a document type definition. It was failed. It cost a lot of industries a lot of money. For such a structured text for which the legal basis is obvious, I cannot understand why it is so difficult to produce a common DTD or schema in XML so that the information can be exported from the expert centers which are inside the industry in a feasible way. I have difficulties to understand that. And also this morning you mentioned that there were a few tangible deliverables for the ESPC project. I think this should be one. This is a very tangible deliverable, and I think we should have the ambition to look at PIM and make with other objectives and maybe not so ambitious, lower a little bit the ambitious, but at least have the structure which is embedded in the law translated in a standard XML coding.
Okay, I would like, until you decide to comment and take things forward, I would like to comment what Birger Wimblad said. What are the needs and what are the influence of the drug information you provide to user? I think first I agree with you that the knowledge about it is not extensive. But I think several people sitting in the room, and from the experience we have from Sweden, I think there are conclusions, and that is you can't overload with information. I mean, it should be simple, it should be clearly communicated, and it should be rapid. And in a study we did, and Anniko Weg and Pia Bastholm were in charge, that is now online, both tells that the contents is important and how the contents is, so to say, presented. And I mean, that means the linkage we had been in. I mean, I agree that linkage to the ICD codes and ATC codes are important, for an example. And therefore, if we think that the end user need everything, I don't agree on that. It's tangible and specific type of information. And I also think one need to understand how people work at point of care, in the sense, would you like to have reminders and make clear that this may not be absolutely the truth, but you get a rapid, so to say, second opinion by knowing. But I think around SPC information, everyone knows that it's there, it's tricky to get hold of, and you want really to know many things that are there, but they need to be in a very simple way. That's what I think to your question.
Can I come back to what some colleagues just said? We have in Europe, and I'm saying this from the perspective of a European agency, the whole idea of harmonization in Europe is to say we have one source one authorized source of drug information, and after 20 years of history, now we have that through the centralized procedure. I'm now hearing that the vision that some of us here have is already happening, and that some people are taking, and our colleague from Hungary has said that in a very impressive way, you're taking the information and then you digest it. And you say, there are 10 contraindications, and I consider contraindication number 1 to be important, but number 5 not, etc. And I have great respect for your clinical judgment, but fact is that if 10 people across Europe do that, we know what the result is. We have huge heterogeneity again. So we're back, as in the old days, 1950, where everybody did their own thing. Is that something we want to happen? I'm addressing this question to my colleagues from the Commission.
Okay. Robert?
From a drug information center point of view, your book can only be that big. If you make the book of all the SPCs, is a book like this. It weighs 10 kilos. The repertoire that the physicians want to carry in their pocket can only weigh 300 grams. If we translate that information into alert systems and decision support systems, all the research on these systems tells us that we have to be concise. We have to choose only the relevant, the really clinically relevant. It's this balance between exhaustivity and clinical relevance, which is very difficult, I agree. And I don't think it's up to the regulator to make that balance. But the balance has to be made. There is no alternative. You have to reduce the information in order to make it clinically. You have to filter it for clinical relevance, and you have to be very careful not to overload your decision systems. Otherwise, they'll fail. That we know from the research. For the little research that there is so far, we know that for sure.
Someone, you have to switch off your
Okay. Birgit Egerman, and now we should think, what have we said? What are the key points here? And get different, I would say, different views that are quite different together to a common view or understanding, at least.
If I would like to answer to Hans-Georg's question, do we want that everybody does, everybody extracts information from the SPC like they do and have their own standards? I mean, if I would be EMR, I wouldn't like that to do. I would have an official version which I would distribute, and I still can't hinder anybody to do it their own way. But there's one official source, at least, which is available and produced by EMA, not only the long text version, but an electronic, readable, and easy accessible SPC. So if I would work there, I would like to do it and be able to provide it to everybody.
Daniel?
Yes, I agree with Birgit on that. This is the key issue, because if we have instead for each vendor digest the species, we provide one digested species, so to say, with a structure we can agree in a minimal model or something like that. You haven't very much stable situation, and we can build other functions in the back office of that in the future, putting codes or putting other things from EMA organization. But I think this kind of result in this context is very important to reach.
Shall I try to, if I get some help, to sum up some of the points that I've been... Okay. I get some help here, please.
Just one comment. I think I have an example. Okay, for pregnancy categories, the US uses actually 5 categories, A, B, C, D, and X. Europe uses 10 categories, and the producers of the drugs has to take his drug into a category, and the agency accepts it or not or anything. There is a category. If we would have more categories, more for like a single maximum dose, daily maximum dose, and so on, more categories, which should be filled in by the companies, and you nod on it, okay, it's consistent with the text, it would make a more safe use of drugs. Thank you.
Okay, Paul Cohen, please.
So I'd just like to go back to what Lars said previously in his slide. Something we should achieve is a pragmatic approach. What can we have up front in the near future? And other people here have addressed a lot of other factors about information that is lacking in the SPC. And personally, I see that as a bit outside the scope of this, because we are working with existing SPCs. We are looking at how to make them electronically available today to systems. And that is not in contradiction with the ambition to have more information in the future. That is probably desirable, and I'm not a medical expert and I don't know anything about that. But what I know is that there are SPCs today. And jokingly, we can say we already have eSPCs because we have them in PDF. They are already electronic. But as we have discussed here, we have the challenge of how to extract information in a structured way from them. And this can be difficult, as witnessed by the PIM project, maybe, but it is certainly doable. In Sweden, we have a situation where I'm responsible for a system called the Swedish Drug Information Database, which provides a number of services to clinical systems, expert systems, and prescription systems for doing queries about drug information. So where do we get our drug information? We get it from the National Drug Agency in Sweden, and we get it from a few other organizations, one of which is the trade organizations for the pharmaceutical industry in Sweden, called LIF. And they provide an information system called FASS that has traditionally been provided in printed form, but since maybe 10 years it's been available in electronic form. It's available on the internet, and you can search on products, and you can get, lo and behold, the SPC from the Swedish regulatory agency in HTML. So somehow, magically, they have been able to transform the PDF published by the National Drug Authority or Regulation Agency in Sweden and convert them to HTML. And we have had the request from doctors and the people who order prescription and expert systems in Sweden that they would like to have that information available in our database. So what we do is we get the HTML from their site, and we digest it, and the granularity is the chapters in the SPC. And we can we get the HTML, we provide that so that prescription systems just get the HTML, and if someone sitting in the prescription system wants to see adverse drug effects, whatever, a certain chapter in the SPC, they can see it in a browser. So it's already been done by someone. So the challenge here, to go back to what Birgit said, it would be good to provide a minimal structured set, maybe with the granularity of the chapters that exist in the SPC today, and make them publicly available on the site. It's definitely doable. Someone else has already done it to HTML. Do it to XML instead.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, I don't think we have a problem from the end user perspective. So we build the end user systems, the CPOE, the expert systems. I would agree with the points there that as soon as you can publish something and you can agree to what extent that data set is, be that the new products that are registered as suggested earlier, or whether that's addressing the legacy issue, as soon as you can publish it in some standards such as that, then the end user manufacturers of systems that are used in the hospital environments can consume that very quickly. And the thing that we talked earlier about business cases, the thing that drives my decision to invest in my product or not is whether our users require it and whether the end users and the doctors and using the system want us to publish SPC data, which is exactly the same as was just described by my colleague here. So the challenge for the end user vendor community is much less than the pharmaceutical industry. So if you can tackle that problem, I think that's the core of the issue.
I will try, and I hope I get the help for the, so to say, next part of the discussion to summarize what I understand what we have been discussing. So it's a challenge for me, so I need your help for this. So I would like first to say what I think we have clarified. So that's the first issue. I think there are a number of issues that is now clear for us. That is that there are a number of information, there is a number of databases. I think it was very important that we know that it's a drug dictionary on its way. So you can't get away not having that as a major part to link your eSPC, SPC information. And I understand from all parties sitting here, we are in agreement on that. There are, because that will be a standard and driving force. Still, of course, there are businesses that want their own system, but I think generally it's an understanding that this is important. I think this is very important that this has been clarified. So we can't do anything without considering this issue. I also think we have an understanding of that SPC is valuable. People are trying different ways. I mean, public institutions, local institutions, and trans-European institutions and companies to use it. And we have got very good example of how it is used. Therefore, my conclusion is that we are in agreement that we need, as Walter Haffeli is saying, put that SPC to to the disposition of healthcare providers. I mean, it is a key information source for rational drug prescribing, but it's not the only source. But it's legally there, it's updated, and so on. I think we are in agreement on this. Then I think generally we are trying to understand how big scope should we take. And I think we see that there is a short-term perspective and there is a long-term perspective. I think we still have to work on what we mean with that specifically. I think if questions, then I think we have discussed the needs of the users. And I think there have been precise comments and illustration what is needed. I think there is a risk, I would say, this is a comment. If we don't keep this alive, I mean, I don't think we get the impact of the contents of the SPC in practice. So I think it really needs to be clarified. The challenge we have been discussing is, should we either define in detail the whole model and contents of the SPC that should go into an electronic version? Or should we work pragmatically by testing and putting things to the end user rather rapidly? I think these two approaches are not quite clear to me. And I think Walter has summarized the first view very nicely. I think why we don't understand how we should go forward in the best way, I think, is because we have also got information that there are a lot of work to be done in order to fill up electronically a very structured model. However, we are in agreement that some of the later comments that, and it's also an interpretation, I understand that we have a SPC as it is now. Then we have an electronic format that must be structured in a way that everything can't be present in length at point of care. Therefore, you need a structure like chapter and subchapter, and HTML technology can help there. And I understand that the regulatory body must agree on a process that at the same time you agree on the human readable type SPC, the machine readable, as Hans-Jörg is saying, must be approved. I mean, this is what we put together. So I see that to resolve this different view we have is that a way forward is to, most likely, I think, what has come out, to put on the web or in an electronic format like an HTML organized electronic SPC. Then I think we need also to discuss, the areas to focus on. It has been covered. It's about dosage, indication, contraindication, because at some point we need probably to experiment how are these used and how, what impact do it have in practice. That's a trial to summarize so far. And we now move forward, and we are trying to synthesize how we should go into the final issues about the way forward and closing of a session. So are there any immediate suggestions based on the summary I did and the discussion you have had during coffee and tea drinking? Please.
If I may add, what we're hoping to move out from this meeting is some concrete suggestions on the way forward. Is this, in the eyes of these stakeholders that are around here, a useful project? Should we pursue it? Should we abandon it? Is it being done anyway? And will semantic webs and artificial intelligence take over so everything we do will become redundant? If we should continue, what are your wishes, or your realistic wishes, please? What we could do as an agency, what we could do as a group. That would be my personal wish.
I would like also to add, based on what Hans-Jörg has said, of course, this is a responsibility of EMEA and of the different national bodies. But this project has been done together with a network across Europe. So I think it's very good to get comments. How could we use this expertise that have, so to say, succeeded to keep together, and I think keeps also good ties to the academic community and healthcare institutions. Who would like to start?
One thing in top of my mind, going back to the format and the vocabularies, this ISO effort was mentioned before. There are the ICD codes and possibly SNOMED maybe. So even going for XML for defining the format, I understand that seems to be the choice. I think it's important to define mechanisms to proper linking vocabularies, and also in multiple vocabularies, not only one, and also in a way that is independent on the vocabularies themselves. And the first thing I can think of, if I have to imagine links between XML and vocabularies, taxonomies, and ontologies, blah, blah, is proper use of namespaces and agreement on identifiers.
Birgit Eyman.
I think it's not all about the XML, even though it was one wish, but there was only one wish which was allowed. So there might be some more wishes as well. So I think that we need defined fields. We need a model for how the data should be delivered to the users. As an example, I have to go through about 50 SPCs every second week and look for the maximum daily dose. It would be wonderful if that would be available in a field already provided by EMA that we could extract automatically, and I do not have to read the dosing part of the SPCs for all those new drugs coming onto the market. And I think it's not only me doing that. I think it's a lot of people for different vendors, different companies doing that. So that part of structured information should be available. And I think that is not actually a big deal to do, to deliver it.
If I may, what I'm hearing is we should move away from prose writing into more tabular information. Is that, I see nods here. Yeah, would that be helpful?
More than tabular should be control vocabulary, which is not exactly the same. Control vocabulary could be the solution for that, which is moderate impairment, renal impairment, should be clearly explained in a dictionary in a thesaurus.
So what you are saying, so we all understand, because I think we speak different languages, and I don't just mean the European languages, I mean our professional languages. When you say controlled language, in some SPCs we may have a term heart attack, in another one we have myocardial infarction. You want to avoid that kind of heterogeneity. That's what you mean by controlled language. That's very different, yes, from the tabulated, where it says maximum dose allowed per day, or whatever you want to call it. Okay.
Sorry.
Please.
I'm working in the NHS. I'm a pharmacist, and maybe I'm just taking this as an outsider. Just to me, it's a no-brainer what you're talking about. It seems to me that what we need to do, or what you guys need to do, is to start tomorrow or next week, and for the SPCs that come into you, try and look at what you've got and put it yourself into tabular form. Take 5 or 6. And just pilot it and see how it works and see what it looks like. To me, it's, as a clinical person, it just seems to me to be a no-brainer. Let's get on with it. It's simple, straightforward. Let's get cracking. The sooner we start, the sooner we can finish. Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Well, perhaps at the same time we can build on what Walter and his team has already provided. That means if new SPCs are coming up, and Walter and his team, I think they've really done an excellent job and provide possible areas where perhaps if the information is already available, these empty spaces can perhaps be filled. If they can't be filled, fine. But if they can be filled, excellent. I think then we can perhaps, as you just recommended, to start with a couple of products and then move ahead.
Walter, please.
I guess it's not an and or question, it's an and question. We need some texts to make sure that human beings can understand. But for a decision support system, we cannot use prose. So we need structured information, and I think, therefore, we should start doing an appendix to the SPC, which contains such structured data, like a half-life or a maximum daily dose and so on. And this is not redundant. This is something else which can be used for electronic systems to help improve prescribing.
Please.
Yeah, just maybe going the same. I think no mobile phone manufacturer would allow to have that content created outside of a structured content model or XML model, because this is a very complicated product. The product information comes in multiple strengths, multiple presentations. So this industry will never, ever go back to the old Word or FrameMaker process. But if we want to do this, if we want to be more agile with information, in terms of catering to different audiences in the right way, then we need to structure it. And I think we will be limited in this context, and I'm not the expert, but I know the data very well, by the legacy material that is around. I think you need to take a very pragmatic approach in, maybe in the first round, make it not too complicated to get the bulk of history of 10, 15 years centralized procedure material over into structured content. And then in the second wave, go and do really structured content and saying, okay, this is the value X, and that has to be has a certain data type, and this data type will be defined through a dictionary or whatever. But I think take it pragmatic. Think the legacy that we have to get over, and don't over-engineer it. Maybe take the simple approach first, the QID templates. Have a structure, make it simple, define that as the first wave, and bring enough legislation behind it so that it actually takes off and we move into something structured in the not too distant future. That would be my wish to this initiative.
Thank you very much. I would ask you to the comments that you are thinking about and you have not done, and the challenges that have not been put forward. Please put those forward when we're now trying to summarize, so we get a very successful workshop in the end. I urge you for that. And I also would like to have a specific comments from the vendors. I mean, how do you see that the public institution like EMEA and the regulatory bodies put an effort into providing this information for use? I mean, how can it help you? I mean, I have not seen your real vision how open available information can help you, if you would like to comment on this. Yes, please.
If you set the standards of information, and some standards how to provide this information to the customers, that I think would help us a lot. We wouldn't have to make the judgment by ourselves. Also, we were talking about vocabularies and dictionaries and so on. It's easy to have a code at the same time. And also your example about heart attack and myocardial infarction, I think this should be included. Myocardial infarction for professionals, heart attack for the patients. And if we could have like terminology for professionals, terminology, and this is the code for it. This would be, I think, the best way, and the level of importance, for example. And I think we should concentrate on the time of prescription. What are the crucial data and the time of prescription? There are the errors made.
Okay, I agree with that last point, and I think when we first start off on this project, I think we had, as Hans-Jörg said, idea was that the ESPC would come the first port of call when a physician was looking at a new product as to what are the core elements of that information that he needs, and provide that. So that becomes, if you like, the standard, whether it's a patient or a physician, for new products coming through. So I think that should be our vision, is what are the core elements, so we can compile those into the ESPC and then move on from there.
Can I raise a more fundamental question? We've been with this project for more than a year, 2 years probably, and I put this idea before some people at the MIT in the US, and the MIT is all about robots, artificial intelligence, etc. And the response I got from them is, forget it. We will have artificial intelligence tools in a couple of years that will take the information from that text you have today and that will extract it as good as your human brain does it. Forget the project. What is people's view of that?
I think this is a very, very good comment. Please, David.
In fact, they can only extract what is there, but there is much information the software companies have which is not in there. I'm thinking on pharmacokinetic parameters. So they have much more than are present in the SPC.
That question is not permitted. We have said we will not revolutionize the way drugs are developed. If you say you want, at the time of licensing, every single PK parameter for every single subpopulation, we will have no new drugs out on the market. So please stick to the problem. The problem is we have a set of information. You say we don't have enough information. I fully accept that. But that's a reality. Please, let's stay for a moment within that reality.
Please.
I'm not convinced we will have systems that are that intelligent even in the next few years. Currently, I've got a problem in that one of the medications we're trying to process, it's a fairly old medication, there's 10 different SPCs, and they all say different things. How can any system, other than a human, process that at the moment? That's one of my difficulties. Most prescribing in the UK is at the VMP, the generic level, and VMPs don't have SPCs. We can artificially create something that looks like an SPC, which is an aggregate, but when you've got two products, one is licensed and one is not licensed, from the same manufacturer with different names, I have no understanding how you would possibly process that using any kind of machine learning.
Robert has some answer to the question of Hans here. I will also then give a comment on it.
I come back to my remark. The information that is in the unstructured text was produced in an environment that was highly structured. And all the structure is lost exporting it to PDF or text. And of course, maybe in a few years we can maybe recreate with a machine this structure, but it was there in the first place. So let's keep it. Let's not lose it at the first export time and use it as it is.
I would like to comment what Hans here is saying. I think your colleague at MIT is wrong in the sense that how you react and how you use knowledge is very local. Everything is local. So I see the information from SPC or ESPC that has to be put into the perspective of the prescriber community, and it must also be, so to say, in agreement what opinion leaders locally think and local guidelines. So I think the human mind will still try to see how you agree to local type of trends. And therefore, I think if you want to have an impact, if that's a question, I mean, only putting the information will not help. It has to be interpreted in a local context. So I think from that point of view, we are still valid as a project.
I would like to comment on that on the technical side. So I think if we have enough training data of that, it might be that we someday come into this position that we can extract that really automatically. But that's a long way to go, in my opinion.
Daniel?
Yes, I should say that, yes, it's a very long goal to translate everything to in text form in a way that is acceptable in every context. This is a very difficult situation, but you can do some kind of tricks in that. This example of heart attack and cardiac infarct. If you write in Google that, Google searches in the two, do get hits both in heart attack and cardiac infarct. And now, if you take your Google search, it's doable. You can do that now. You can do very much. Many of the problems we have are doable now, are solvable. Yeah.
Birger Winblad.
I'm always coming back to the end user. I would like to know more how doctors in the real situation, if we had a database like this, a support, how would they use it? And there are two aspects of it. We want to serve them with the needs they have, but we also want to serve them with further knowledge. There is an educational aspect in this type of database also, which is very, very important. We have to handle more and more specific, more and more dangerous drugs, more and more severe diseases are treated with drugs. And this is the world that we are going to face. And we also need to educate doctors. And we all know that the economy is not increasing in relation to what we can do. So more educational time for doctors will not come. So such a database would also focus a bit on educational matters. But I think the quick and dirty model that you suggested, I forgot your name, is a good way of starting and then to learn how doctors handle the information. I don't think we can theoretically make up that. We have to learn about what can we do for our colleagues and how can we educate them.
Steinar?
Yes, in Norway we are now implementing an electronic prescription support system, and our biggest problem is that we have to translate from PDF to XML because we send it out as XML. So our greatest wish would be that industry would deliver us XML format. That would, because this translation, which we have to do manually, in fact, because there is no other way of doing it, it's an extreme security risk. So we have a lot of mistakes by doing this. So this is, in our view, unacceptable that industry does not deliver what they have in structured format.
Could I ask for the understanding, how much work is it to take the information into XML format? I need to understand that. I have not really understood it, if it's easy or not. First.
Hello? Is it on? Do I need it?
Lady in the back.
Hello? Is it on? Okay, sorry. I think the answer to that question is fairly evident if you just take a moment to look across the pond at the United States. The FDA, in my observation over the last few years, has walked this path and has put itself in the position that this information, drug product information, is available in an industry standard XML format for exactly the purposes that you're looking for. SPL, as an approved standard, as a fully adopted and pervasive mechanism and technology to turn useless fax, PDF information into a rich, semantically rich database of drug product information, it's there, it's done. 2 weeks from now, we'll be at a 4-day conference trying to determine what more can be done now that we have this information. Yet we sit here going around and around and around, even questioning, should it be put in a database in XML? Do we even really need to do that? What's wrong with PDF? It's astonishing to me. It's quite astonishing. There is so much to know. Matthias, I have the utmost respect for you, but the SPL standard is far richer for this context than the DITR standard will ever. It's not even a standard. It's an IBM project. You know, PIM failed because it wasn't a standard. It needs to be a standard. The standards are there. IDMP is coming. Everything is moving along. We just need to get on the track, put something on the track and get moving.
There are some comments. You were very specific, so there are some comments, of course.
Yeah, because there is a difference. In Europe, we have all these languages, and I think the migration task is affected by the languages because we have not only inconsistencies that are surfacing in terms of how the templates have been applied, we have as well inconsistencies across the languages. So if we migrate into a structured content environment, we must make sure that we are consistent on those structures. if SPL, if DITA, if you want to have an industry standard that is used across different industries, DITA might be a good candidate. But whatever you decide for something. The problem, I think, is really take the multilinguality into account if you do this migration and don't over-engineer it. The actual question of you, how much effort is this, is very much determined by the granularity and the quality levels that you are requiring on this particular conversion that is there. If you want to have very high quality, then it will be laborious. There are technical means to speed this up, but this would be worth an own workshop or an own thread for discussion.
Daniel Rodriguez.
It is to answer your question about how difficult is to convert to XML from the PDF. But this is the answer. This depends on the granularity. If the granularity is in the section or chapter level, it's peanuts. It's nothing. You can do it automatically without problems whatsoever. No. But if you have to have some kind of complex granularity with those such, this is a very difficult task.
Are there any further question, remarks, and especially ideas on the way forward? Because now we will move into how the way forward. Yes, I will leave a word, please.
Yeah, the SPL way is a way to go, but there is a big difference between the US and the Europe. In the US, SPL is required as one of those formats to be submitted by industry to be approved. So if the ultimate goal is to ask industry to submit that information into an SPL-like format, whatever it is, it has to be required by the Commission at the end of the day. And then industry will start to feed the information in that format. But that's a long-term scenario because it will take time to require that. Now for the short-term scenario, yes, we can convert PDF to an XML format that could be close to an SPL-like format. But again, as what has been said there, you will be limited to trunk section by section, which will be okay, let's say, don't talk about peanuts, but it will be okay for the centralized product because usually the QRD templates are well followed. It's not exactly the same for nationally authorized product. There are much more differences there. So it won't be peanuts, but it's doable. But is there a real advantage to have a structured, between quotes, a structured information that cut an SPC into sections? Is there a real benefit for the prescribers? That's a question maybe for the end users then.
Okay. If no more questions, we will go into the next point.